Good morning, my beautiful babes and babettes. I'm your resident active advocate, and I'm a little bit hyperactive because I haven't slept since 6 a.m. I hate waking up early, but it's okay. Y'all should be grateful to be getting a video out of me at all today, though, because I just started a new book, and my characters and I are getting on like a house on fire, and it's a beautiful thing. But putting that aside momentarily, my video for today is going to be on the customer service regulations under the AODA. As usual, I am going to recommend to you the AODA blog, aoda.ca, parts of which are composed by a very intelligent person on the matter. So that is a very viable resource for everybody. When it comes to customer service, it doesn't matter how many employees a business has. A business is considered any place that has one or more employees, and this includes the manager. So, when it comes to interactions between the customer service staff and the customers themselves, anyone who comes in is entitled to service. It doesn't matter what their disability is. Attitudinal barriers can be kind of a big deal when it comes to this sort of thing, and especially in the case of people not knowing exactly what to do. This doesn't necessarily have to do with discrimination, but you see it all the time where people might go to grab someone's wheelchair or to pet their service animal or speaking very loudly to a person they can see is hard of hearing. Maybe the person's wearing a hearing aid or, things like that. It's not necessarily open discrimination. It may just be a matter of not knowing what to do. I actually watched a customer service oriented video this morning. It was about a half-hour explanation of what customers are owed, disabled or not, but it was quite bare bones. The training that employees get in Ontario is not, in my opinion, very comprehensive. But I did appreciate the fact that a lot of it had to do with observing the basic human rights and dignities of people with disabilities. For example, if a person is using a wheelchair and can't reach up to grab something on a shelf above their head, you, as the customer service representative, are not supposed to touch their chair without their permission. Instead, what you're generally supposed to do is maybe to ask them to move back and away from the shelf so that you can get what it is that they need down from the shelf. This is a model of inclusion, but it is also a model of dignity. To go along with the model of dignity, though, if they do want you to help them move their chair, or anything like that, or with a service animal even, you're not supposed to leave them facing the opposite direction. Certainly don't leave them in the corner. Certainly don't leave them facing a wall. You would not do this to any other able-bodied person. So, in the same vein, treat everyone as equally deserving of dignity when they come into your store looking for your services and for your products. I actually learned this morning that 85% of customer population tends to be repeat customers, return customers. And it costs a company a lot more money to lose one customer than it does to keep 5 customers, say. It's much easier, in other words, to keep the person coming back to your business if you know how to treat them with dignity and with inclusion. That way, you're not losing any customers and costing both yourself and your company money. But when it comes to inclusion as well, and this is not in the building code, this is just basic movable parts kind of knowledge. When it comes to inclusion, spaces need to be left open. And this has to do with aisles, this has to do with display cases being far enough apart from one another. I cannot tell you because I am a partial time wheelchair user. I can't walk long distances. I have a heart condition. I cannot tell you how many times I have gone into a clothing store and not been able to get my chair between the displays in the middle of the floor. A lot of the time, they're rather scattered throughout the room, or, these places are quite large. They could organize things better than they do, but they might not be taking certain things into account, like how far out the clothing may stick from the rack. They may just be putting the rack in a place and sort of leaving it there without having regard for where the clothes themselves are going to be when they're put on the rack. So that I have found difficult. Grocery stores, not as much. They're much easier because you have to be able to get a cart up and down the aisles as well. Those are much easier to navigate using a wheelchair, but just be careful if you are a customer service rep or any employee at any store that you don't leave the aisles blocked by boxes or by things that you're stacking the shelves with. These sorts of things will always get in the way of people with service animals, people who use walkers, wheelchairs, scooters, that kind of thing. Another aspect of customer service, though, that needs to be taken into account is communication, both verbal and written. When it comes to people with, say, a visual impairment like mine, I can't in a grocery store see the signs that hang up over the aisles that say to you what that aisle contains. I'm not tall enough to read those. I don't have enough long distance vision to read those. I don't have enough detail vision to read those. So, if you are a customer service representative and I come into your store and ask you what that sign says, technically it is your job to read it to me. If you're me, once you learn the layout of a place, you generally don't forget things unless, like at Walmart, things are shifted around every 2 weeks. But there are also people with intellectual disabilities, with processing disabilities, with communication disabilities, who you may have to communicate with in a different way than you would me. You can read me the sign and I'll be fine, right? But someone with, say, an intellectual disability, they may not be able to fully understand where things are or how things are meant to be ordered, those sorts of things. This is the same at the checkout counter. If you're counting change, have patience with the person with the mobility disability in their hand who might not be able to sort coins very quickly or get bills apart very quickly. With the plasticky stuff that bills have in them in Canada now, they stick together a lot more often and they're kind of difficult to get apart. So if a person has a mobility disability of that kind, then please be patient. But this also applies to visual impairment. If I can't see the denomination of coin or bill that I'm giving you, again, patience is key. Don't get overwhelmed. None of this is on you necessarily to solve. You can ask whether someone needs your help, but please try to go against what might be your immediate judgment and swoop in and aid the person you perceive as being in need. That too is a violation of the person's dignity and of their independence. Generally, if people want help, they will ask for help, if they are more independently minded. Anyway, when it comes to helping a people with an intellectual disability, say, though, they might not know whether they need help. So if you see them struggling, give them time. But if it continues, you may want to ask, how can I help you? It's a very just basic phrase that you say 100 times a day to all the customers who come into your store. How can I help you? And it's no different with people with disabilities. The communication rules also apply to people who are hard of hearing or deaf. If they can read your lips, and some deaf people can, don't be blocking your mouth in any way so as to facilitate lip reading. don't speak in a low voice intentionally, because there's always going to be a lot of noise in these sorts of places. Speak up, enunciate, make your lips easily read, make things clear. But don't scream in the person's face. That can be very condescending, also very annoying, especially if a person is wearing a hearing aid, because hearing aids elevate every sound in the room to the same volume. But if you make yourself that much louder, that's going to get annoying real fast. So those are some basic customer service regulation guideline things that I think most people are probably aware of. But a lot of the time, as I say, it's the attitudinal barrier that is most difficult to overcome. So the two sides of this coin is, don't ignore the person completely and write them off as status non grata and think they're someone else's problem. But also don't swoop in and be the knight in shining armor and get everything for them and do everything for them, because that is a violation of their dignity and their independence. So on the one hand, don't ignore, because that's a violation of personhood and of dignity. On the other hand, don't swoop in, because that's a violation of independence and dignity. Dignity being the key word here, okay? As I have said throughout this series, we are all human beings. Tomorrow, my dear babes and babettes, I'll be starting a series within a series called What Lily Forgot, and I'm going to outline all of the points, and I know that there are many, that I have missed throughout this series. So I have a little bit of research to do. I have some consulting to do with people who are better informed than I am, and I will see you for that tomorrow. Mwah!